Nicole Scudder for Mobile Geeks, and here I am at the Sony launch event in Taipei. This is the second time that I've been able to get my hands on the Z1 Compact, so I've had some time to think about it, and I've come to the conclusion that this 4.3-inch smartphone has to be the best small form factor smartphone on the market. If you look at the competition with what Samsung and HTC has brought out with their minis, they've actually decreased the specs, right? They've dumbed them down, they've taken their flagship device and just made it a little bit cheaper and smaller. Right? But the thing is that if you haven't jumped on the phablet train, and a lot of people haven't, and it's not just about having dainty girl hands, it's about maybe just having average sized male hands, right? Just normal hands. It just doesn't fit as well. You know, the navigation is a lot more easy when you can reach up to the notification bar quite simply, and you're not compromising on specifications. So it has the Snapdragon 800 processor. It has a SD card slot for expansion, 2 GB of RAM. It's got a 20 megapixel camera, and the display is actually arguably a little bit better than what's on the Z1, the 5-inch version, because this has an IPS display. Because it has an IPS display, it actually has wider viewing angles than what they have with the compact. So they've actually kind of increased the specification a little bit on the compact, which I find kind of interesting. So now the only phone that I can really think of that would be real competition, or maybe you should pick that up instead, would be the Moto X, right? For value for dollar, that phone's really competitive. So now Corvita was at CES with me, and she did the hands-on because that's her kind of go-to Android smartphone. So why don't we check out Corvita's hands-on at CES?
You can go anywhere there.
Hey, Corvita Raven here, hanging out with Mobile Geeks, and we're going to do a quick comparison with the Xperia Z1 Compact and the Moto X. So they're relatively in the same size. The Moto X is a little bigger because it has a much bigger display at 4.7 inches versus the Xperia Z1 Compact's 4.3-inch display, but they're both at 720p resolutions. The Compact has a better camera at 20 megapixels compared to the Moto X's 10 megapixel camera, but they're relatively shooting the same video resolutions at 1080p HD at 30 frames per second. The Z1 Compact sports a micro SD slot right over here, unlike the Moto X. So this brings the Z1 Compact's storage space up to 64 gigabytes versus the Moto X, which only goes up to 32 gigabytes at the end of the day. And the Z1 Compact also comes with a slightly bigger battery of only 2300 milliamps versus 2200 on the Moto X, which should translate to a slightly better battery life as well on the Z1 Compact. Android 4.3 is what the Z1 Compact is rocking. Moto X, however, has already gotten the 4.1 or 4.4 upgrade to Android KitKat. But Sony promises to deliver the 4.1 experience to the Xperia Z1 Compact soon enough. And where the Z1 Compact is exclusive to T-Mobile, the Moto X, on the other hand, is available on all carriers. Here it is on AT&T, but it's available for all the major US carriers, unlike the Z1 Compact. And Sony has been running with the Xperia line exclusive on T-Mobile for a while now, so that's something that's a bit of a trade-off. But other than that, they're relatively the same. And that about wraps up our quick comparison on the Moto X and the Sony Xperia Z1 Compact. From Mobile Geeks, live at CES.